This week on the podcast, I am joined by Ryan Bolduc. Ryan is a real estate investor. He lives in the Biddeford-Saco-Kennebunk area, does some investing there, does some investing up north and in other parts of the country. So I've been following him on Instagram for the past few years at Maine Multifamily. He puts out some great info, some stuff that I love. Messaged him a few times. We've connected that way, and I invited him on the pod. So he came here to share some of his information, how he got started in real estate investing, some of his learnings along the way, systems he has in place. Awesome conversation. If you're thinking about investing in real estate, this is one to listen to for sure. So this is the Randy Forcier podcast. To support it, do me a favor. Please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Post new episodes every Monday. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate all the support. Here's Ryan. All right, here with Ryan Bolduc. Ryan is a real estate investor. Been following him for, I think, a couple of years now on Instagram. Has the handle at Maine Multifamily. Love following what you're doing, and I'm happy that you came on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, it's great to be here. It's good to actually talk in person or virtually, but
yeah, no, I mean, we've been shooting notes back and forth over the years. I mean, I like the content that you're putting out. I do some real estate investing myself, but I think the way you do things kind of connects with me, and it's some of the stuff you're doing is things that I aspire to do too. So I'll look forward to talking to you about it. When did you create this Instagram handle and decide that you wanted to like put your real estate venture out into the world?
I think I created it in 2020 around the COVID time, and I actually did it without telling anybody that I knew. And I did it without showing my face or anything because I was all just nervous about people knowing what I did.
Yeah.
But then, it kind of progressed to showing my face a little more. And then I took a hiatus for the last year or so. And then I'm just kind of getting back into it again now, trying to post a few more things.
So was this a COVID hobby of yours, or you were doing it regardless and COVID just happened to happen at that?
I think it kind of happened then. I started to get more into real estate, and that's when I got into a mastermind. And then I was like, all right, now I'm going to start buying more properties. Yeah. I started off buying one every year. And then at that point I was like, all right, now I'm going to buy more and, see what I can do.
Nice. And, so before we get into the real estate stuff, this is not your main gig. You have a job, like a full-time job.
Right? I do.
So
yes.
Why don't you share that and a little bit about your background?
Yep. So I actually run a engineering company based out of Biddeford. Started it in 2016. Our first year was 2017, same year as I bought my first rental property. So it's been a chaotic, hectic last few years of growing that. We're bringing on our 18th employee next week. That's exploded. And I kind of went from the real estate from there. I mean, got an education, UMaine engineering degree, and then kind of went into it after that at the shipyard in Portsmouth, and then for an EPC, engineering procure construction firm, and then ended up where I'm at now. And they gave me the opportunity to start my own business within a business. I pitched them a plan and they said, we're all in. You have control to do whatever you want from this point on. So it kind of worked out.
So what type of engineering is it then?
It's electrical engineering. So we deal with substations, power plants, a lot of field testing and commissioning of substations and power plants.
I would think being an engineer lends itself well to being a real estate investor in terms of analyzing deals and being very analytical. Do you feel like that's translated well?
Oh, yeah. No, it's translated well for me because I'm a Google Sheet or Excel nerd. I am in there all the time. I just forwarded out a couple to a few friends who are asking for. So I do some time logs. I do all kinds of project management and NOI calculations and rents and all that stuff. So I enjoy the numbers, and so that's why I liked real estate from the get-go.
So you mentioned a mastermind is what got you into it. Tell me about that. What kind of mastermind? Local mastermind? Something online?
Well, it was, it's kind of that one, 2020. I started, it was the David Green mastermind, who's like now the Bigger Pockets podcast host.
Yep.
So I started off there. I did that for a full year. But then the first time somebody from the group called me, he had said, I'm going to do 10 BRRRs this year. And I was like, how do you even do that?
What's a BRRRR? Just so everyone's on the same page with what a BRRRR is.
It's when you buy a property, basically rehab it, you rent it out, you refinance out all of your money, hopefully, and then you repeat the process. So then once you pay back everybody, then you borrow that money again or use your own money and then keep buying more and more deals and then just cash out refi throughout the whole process to keep recycling your funds over and over again.
Yep.
And so, I had no idea. Like I'd listened to books and podcasts, but it all seemed kind of voodoo to me or woo woo. I was like, I'm just going to buy one property a year for the next 10 years and I'll be all set, which is still a great strategy, actually. But yeah, so that's what kind of kicked me off was hearing somebody else do it. I think it was a local guy too. He was New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And then he just kind of told me, oh, I'm using private money and all that. And I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And then I just kind of went off from there.
So what was the first property that you bought?
Investing, the first property I bought was a 4 unit in Saco. So yeah, I was renting at the time. I was a single dad, and then I just decided I heard bigger pockets for like 2 months, and then I said I'm going to buy a property and I'm going to move into it. Or I wasn't planning on moving into it, but then once the FHA stuff, you're like you got to move in. So I moved in, and it worked out extremely well in the long run.
FHA is a no-brainer for people that want to acquire a multifamily property with a low down payment and are okay living in it. So I mentioned before, and people listening know that I do mortgages. So that's the one scenario where we're seeing people do FHA loans is for multifamily homes nowadays. So it's good that you were in a position to take advantage of that, because if you had a single family home and you tried to buy that 4 unit, you would have needed 25% down, or 20% maybe if you were doing a commercial loan. So smart move to take advantage. So you kind of grew from there. But how was it being a landlord in that first 4 unit? Tough, or you just kind of lay down the law and it was fine?
No, I don't like to. I'm not much of a. I can be a ball buster, I guess, but not a lot of the time until I get to a certain level. But I didn't really want to tell people I was the owner, and I was kind of wishy
Yeah.
washy, and then trying to grow that business at the same time. Didn't have any money. I mean, I used my 401k
Mhm.
as a loan against that just for the down payment.
Mhm.
And then, so I was just so nervous about not having money, and I had to go on the road a lot to like Florida in the winter for work and outages. So I would just be completely panicked about how the sidewalk was going to get shoveled or anything like that. And I basically did everything myself.
Yeah.
But it taught me what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. But I mean, for me, pain's the only motivator,
Yeah.
and it was kind of painful getting through that. But over the years, it's helped me develop, the systems that we got now. So
It's so good that you did that though. Just, I've been there too, changing faucets and cleaning out places and all that stuff. And it's like you really get an appreciation for it. And you realize that it's the brutal part. And when you can have someone else take that off your plate so you can focus on other things, it's kind of a game changer.
oh yeah,
So
100%.
so you transitioned from that place into buying more properties, obviously. So was it a property a year for a certain period of time, and things have kind of grown? Because I get the impression that there's more going on than just a property a year for you nowadays. But how did it kind of grow from there?
Yeah, so after that, I moved into, our home now where I am in 2018. That was 2017. Then 2018, I moved into another one, and then I bought a 4 unit in Biddeford,
Yep.
where I didn't even see it actually. My realtor walked it. I was at a job site in Florida, and he's like, "Oh, it's great." I said, "All right, put an offer in," and then we ended up getting that property. And then another year later, in 2019, I knew my neighbor at the first 4 unit. He did not want to be in that place anymore. He inherited it from his parents. He was very cantankerous. He was always like yelling at all the tenants, and he had the place was completely empty except for him in the basement. So I got the feeling he wanted to sell. So I went over there, and at first he told me to, kind of screw off or whatever. And then eventually he ended up selling me that one. So I ended up getting my 4 unit, the 3 unit, and then the parking lot next to it in that deal. So now I own like 3 lots in a row. So that was 2019, and that was a very large rehab project for me. And it again stressed me out, and I didn't have good contractors, and juggling the family and the business, and then it was a lot to do. And I was like, oh, I can never do that again. I couldn't handle more than one project at a time is what I was kind of thinking.
So what were the key learnings then? Having good contractors, or was there other things that kind of come to mind? A million things probably.
Yeah, I mean, holding them to a scope of work too. I mean, it's tough to find good contractors. So sometimes you have to work with what you got, and then making sure that, you know, you don't pay them before you say you're going to pay them. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, you go and pay, and you're thinking like honest day's work or something. You're like, show up at 10 and give them money. And then run to the store and come back, and there's no one to be seen. You know what I mean? It's like, that's kind of what was happening. And then all of a sudden, they didn't even show up to finish the last unit. I had to call in the recruits and my dad even and stuff like that to
Yeah,
kind
but
of
you
help.
piece it together, right? Like you you're learning from that, even though it's not going the way you want. Like there is some benefit to it, things you could do differently next time, and
Oh yeah, 100%.
how to handle situations. And
Yeah, and how to deal with people, contractors, and realize what kind of what you're up against. And now I have one in each market that I don't have to worry,
yep,
which makes it you know so much nicer to say, hey, just go look at that unit, give me a price, and get it done next week.
yep.
That's kind of how it works now.
So you're at the point where you're investing outside of Biddeford Saco. Where else are you investing?
Pretty much just like Central Maine,
Yep,
Waterville, Augusta area. So
yep.
that's the other part in Maine where we're at. And then I do have a rental house out in like the Bridgeton area, but
Yep.
that's a short-term rental. But yeah, pretty much multifamilies, all Biddeford, Saco, and then Augusta, Waterville area.
So do you work with management locally, or is it yourself managing with you having those contractor relationships that you talked about?
I do use management now, and then my wife during the pandemic stopped. She was nursing and then stopped nursing, so then now she handles a lot of management type activities, any sort of tenant stuff she started handling and things like that. So again, it kind of freed me up and, allowed her to kind of replace what she was doing,
Yeah.
outside the home from the home. So
Yeah.
it kind of worked out both ways.
That's one of the benefits from investing in real estate. And if you are going to have some level of involvement on a management level, yeah, you're basically working from home. If you can stomach the work and the people are okay to deal with, I think it could be a good fit. But I mean, I think finding good tenants is key, right? I mean,
Yeah.
are you still updating your buildings to the point that you're putting in like some good tenants, or are you a little bit more lenient with that sort of stuff?
Well, right now, I mean, anytime a unit opens, it's pretty much we're turning the unit. We're putting
Mhm.
in new flooring, paint, everything like that. Because I haven't done a lot of rent raises over the time. It's like when they move out, then that's when we really do the rent
Yeah.
raises. So we'll get them up to market that way. So anytime anybody moves, we immediately, this year, I've probably done over a dozen unit turns, just updating, created 3 more units, stuff like that within buildings.
Finding
So,
some areas to add units, that's awesome. That's a great way to improve the value of your property, create new cash flow.
oh, yeah.
Why do you think people moved out? Did you guide them out, or
Oh,
was it
well, I
similar?
mean, it's a lot. Well, this year it's been one building was problem tenants, and it
Mhm.
was, we need you out now. A lot of stuff, we get into it, but with the COVID and the rent relief in Maine, there were tenants that had 18 months of rent free. And then as soon as it ran out, November 30th of 2022,
Mhm.
no one had any money. So there was mass evictions. Like, I mean, I was questioning a few things in December, January, trying to rent units in Maine, which is
Yep.
not a good time to rent.
Yeah, it's the worst.
We had like 25% vacancy in that time period. And we had switched management companies. So
Mhm.
there was like this huge thing. And then one building, I completely got rid of almost everybody and kind of started fresh. And thankfully now it's like this year has just been like stacking, better tenants, better quality, better management, better systems to the point that it's like, oh, okay, now this is what cash flow is supposed to be. This is
Cool.
what, rents are supposed to be. But I'm still investing heavily into some CapEx projects at a lot of the properties.
Just
And
like
then,
roofing type stuff, porches here and
yeah,
there.
yeah, like probably 40 units. I'm putting all new heating systems in and stuff like that so that I can
Mhm.
individually meter things like that.
Pass that cost on to the tenant.
Right. It's just so variable that,
Cool.
rather than doing large rent increases, just kind of
Mhm.
put the onus on them to say, hey, rather than a big rent increase getting you to market, you'll be responsible now for your heat. And then our cash flow isn't so, slow in the
Well, yeah,
winter and in the summer.
if you have 250 a gallon oil versus 450 or whatever, that's a big difference. If we're talking the number of units, it sounds like you have. I mean, it's tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
in
One portfolio, yeah, uses like 20,000 gallons of oil. So if
Yeah,
it goes up $4,
yeah,
that's
ton of money.
$80,000 on top of the oil bills.
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but like since I've owned properties, at least in the Biddeford Saco area, it always seemed like it was on the landlord to pay for heat.
Hmm.
And other places I've lived, it was always on the tenant to pay that sort of thing. So it's good to hear that it's maybe moving in that direction where that cost can be passed on to the
Right.
tenant. It just didn't
Yeah.
seem like it was the norm around here, and it's cool that it's moving maybe in that direction.
Yeah. Definitely other places outside of the state. That's all like the
Yeah,
tenants pay everything pretty much,
it's normal.
even water, sewer.
Yeah,
But we don't, up here, it's pretty much, yeah, you pay heat, hot water, and eventually sometimes you can get electricity, But now I've been splitting. I've done electrical upgrades. So everyone have their own meter and all that stuff. It's been a lot of investing in capital or capital expenditures to, looking down the road 2 or 3 years to be like, okay, then I'll be, just with the portfolio we have now, will be very solid cash
Yeah.
flow. So
People don't realize that that takes a level of planning and it takes time. Everyone thinks like if you own properties, you're instantly rich, but they don't realize like those big vacancy issues or the turnovers and the changing all the systems. And yes, at some point it's going to be better, but like it doesn't happen overnight. It
no,
definitely
definitely
takes
not.
planning.
I mean, the first year, I don't even plan on making money. And then if you're doing, if you do inherent problem tenants, I mean, you can go months without rent and you're paying lawyer fees and then you're paying them to move out. Or, I mean, it gets very, very expensive at
That
times.
can throw off a whole year's worth of numbers just by having one tenant like that.
Exactly.
And I experienced that too with, once the rent relief dried up. I think I got someone out last month, but it was a good 9 months of them not paying, and that's
I have
nine
one
thousand
now.
bucks and $1,500 lawyer fees and all that stuff. But people don't realize that that sort of stuff can happen. They just assume, hey, you own property, so you're doing
Oh,
really,
yeah.
really, really well. But there's a ton of
Right.
expense. So you mentioned systems, that you have some systems in place. Is there something that's easy to explain? Like when you say that, is it like rent collecting type systems? Is it finding tenant type systems? Is it more than that? Like what type of systems do you think you've added to your portfolio?
Just like one thing is like, say from a cash flow perspective, like to make sure that it's more stable,
Mhm.
even though, a lot of the places we are paying for heat, to keep a minimum of 6 months of PITI, with principal, interest, tax, and
Yeah.
insurance, in the checking account
Yep.
at all times, and then have a separate CapEx account, which is funded every month. And then, only you and your particular property know what that's going to be. 10,000, it's going to be 20 or 5, but then funding that every month and then only taking withdrawals from that account on the difference from the 6 months of PITI, like every quarter, and
Yep.
then stagger the properties.
Yep.
So that way, each month you're having some sort of cash flow coming out of there. And it's more, if it's a busy heating season, you might have a bunch of oil bills in January, not in
Mhm.
February, then March. So it kind of evens it out throughout the year. And then just, it's outside of just managing the properties too. Um, like I have all these different checking accounts and like, where's the money coming and cash flow, or am I going to overdraw these accounts, as we're building up that reserve. So I hired a virtual assistant who also works for the management company.
Yep.
So he can get into the books, he can get into Appfolio, he gets into Buildium, whichever one we're using, and he
Mhm.
can get all the information out of there. Every single day, my QuickBooks for every single account is updated that day. There's no questions. And then the receipt process, I scan receipts, or my wife, and then it goes into a certain folder, which is like unpaid. And then once it gets paid, it gets moved to that folder.
Yeah.
And then once that receipt gets attached in the QuickBooks with the transaction, then it gets moved to processed, things like that. And then every single morning we get a text via WhatsApp of all of the balances of every account in one lineup. And then every single like credit card or mortgage payment
Mhm.
or large purchase that's coming out that month, again, just to watch cash flow. So then
Yep.
my assistant can flag and be like, hey, whoa, this one's going to, have a $15,000 credit card bill coming in next week. What's going to be the rents coming in, and, forecasting all that stuff,
Yeah.
which used to take hours and hours and hours to do. And now all those things are, done and just kind of at our fingertips to see it on a daily basis. So at any point we can pull up a P&L on every property daily. And then we know that everything's stored. And then just with, we had Buildium. I went through 7 or 8 different softwares. We interviewed all of them and we just found out the right fit. So we got that working exactly the way we
So
needed
what is
it.
that? This is something I spent a lot of time reading about, and I actually used to use
Yeah.
Buildium, and I hate to say it, but I moved back to some spreadsheets, which is the old-fashioned, stupid way to do things. But I've something I spent a lot of time looking into. So what did you settle on?
Well, I personally settled on Buildium down
Yeah.
here with my Biddeford properties. And
Yep.
then my management company that we went to ended up using Appfolio. It's 2 1, 6 in one, half dozen in the other. So what they did is they just took over my Buildium. And so now they're the contact with the tenant. Now they do the rent collection. And then we do showings through either Appfolio or Buildium. Everything gets pushed to all the websites, Zillow, Zumper,
Yeah.
whatever they are called nowadays. There's
Yeah.
so many of them. It goes out to like 15 of them. So those all come in, everything gets logged into Buildium. Like I can go in or Appfolio and see every vacancy, everyone that's shown an interest, what their level is, the chats between various people on the management teams,
Hmm.
if they've submitted an application, the minimum credit scores, all that stuff is all in a
Yeah.
location. So it's kind of just seamless. And then I'll get a text and say, hey, this one's no longer available. And I'm like, phew, we got rent coming in this month for
Yeah.
that unit. And then as far as contractor wise, we set everybody up on EFT. They've allowed, they give us their bank account. So that way we pay everybody through Buildium or
Yep.
Appfolio. I'm going to transition my properties down here to Appfolio just so we don't have two systems.
Some consistency. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so just everything done through that app, whatever it is, the project
I think
property
it's
manager.
important to have a property manager that utilizes those things. So for me, like our portfolio manager is great. And I've been working with them for close to 5 years now. Just they don't use that sort of stuff. I think it makes a big difference if your manager is using that stuff.
Yeah, we had a management company that would like collect cash and then it would be like envelopes and deposits that way. And it was like at the end of the month, how was I 100% sure?
Yeah.
They never shorted me. They probably gave me more just because they were great people, but
But there's some room for
they were
some
not
stuff
tech
there.
savvy. Right.
Yeah.
And I needed, if we wanted to scale, which, I basically doubled this year. So it's like, I needed someone that could adapt to software and take on units very, very quickly, so that's why we opted to go with someone that was more comfortable using software.
So the some of those systems that you reference, are those things that are processes that you came up with on your own, or were you kind of leaning on the way other people have done things and showed you how to do it? Like just the daily texts and just all that sort of stuff.
Well, that's always the tough thing to know because you do it after going through things and then you find out that okay, that's a good way to do it. But I listen to so many podcasts, so many books
Mm-hmm.
all at the same time. I could listen to 12 books at the same time, so I'm never like in my front of my mind remembering it, but I'm sure there's like 100,000 things back there that I heard somewhere else that I think is my idea.
Yeah.
But I think actually like Grant Cardone or something, I heard him saying something about he sees all his bank accounts every single morning. I think that's where I first heard that.
Yep.
And
I'm
I was like,
familiar with Grant.
yeah, because I used to do that myself. I'd go in there and everything, okay, what was spent? What was this?
Yeah.
And then I even have my own personal books, just every expense that I ever do as an engineer. I've tracked since
You
2007.
sound like an engineer. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So since
In my
2000.
business, we try to avoid working with engineers, but
Yeah, yeah. Trust me,
in your case, it
I have
serves
a
you
ton of
well
them.
for the real estate investing piece.
Right. I have enough of
Uh,
them.
So you doubled your portfolio this year, you said.
Well, in Maine, yeah.
In
So,
Maine.
yeah.
So how did you, I mean, without getting too much into details, was it just like one big opportunity that you saw that you were able to capitalize on, or was it a bunch of like 3 or 4 unit buildings? How'd that work?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like once I mentioned I was going to do all those BRRRs, then I bought probably, I don't know, it's hard to remember, 6 or 10 duplex, triplexes up in the Waterville, Winslow, Augusta area, like in 12 months and did all that. So then was kind of looking for the next deal. And then at the end of 2021, so I don't market or anything like that. It's just people end up saying, oh, I heard this guy wants to sell. And then once I hear a warm lead, I'm pretty good at schmoozing, closing, finding out
Yeah.
what they need, what they like. And then kind of the cool part was like the last 50 units I bought in Maine, I only put a total of 2.5% down.
So you finance with private money
With a bank and private money. Yeah. So I did
and
a
then
second.
refinanced at some point to pay off that private loan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I did on a 9 unit that I converted to a 12. And then I'm putting a solar farm in there as well. And so it's gonna offset all of my electricity on all my buildings in Maine.
So you're going to feed into CMP. CMP is going to credit against all your other accounts. I actually think now that you mentioned that, I think that's one of the times I messaged you. I was like, dude, that's freaking awesome doing a solar farm. You see them, you're like, who are these people that are doing these solar farms? And does it make sense? And obviously you did the numbers and it makes sense to do.
Trying it, yeah. So we're going. I think we got to submit to the planning board here. It's listed as a major project, so we'll see if it goes through. It's been
Yeah.
a long. It's been over a year and a half, but I was able to roll that into the financing as well. So I'm not coming out of pocket for any of that or any of the renovations for that particular building. And then another large portfolio in the Waterville area. So it was like 6 buildings, and I think they had like 11 or 12.
Mhm.
And I picked the 6 that I wanted. I actually only wanted 3 of them, but then they made me take the other 3 buildings.
And it was worth
And
it, I guess. To yeah.
now it is because I got them. The way I put the pricing in there, I got them for 25% less than what a wholesaler was offering me the other day. So for the two, the duplexes, I didn't want them, but now they'll be all right, especially once they have their own heating systems in.
Yeah.
So every one of those units will have their own heating system. The 38 that I bought in January will all have brand new heating systems. Those were all 500 below market. So, and they were great quality, updated all the time, but just so like dark wood paneling everywhere.
Yeah.
So we're turning them, but it's probably $3,000 worth of paint just to go over all the coatings and stuff. But
Yep.
yeah, so both of that first deal, I got 80% from the bank, 20% from the seller, and this latest deal, I think I got 80% from the bank and 15 from the seller. So
That's pretty
cool.
that's pretty good to get a seller that's willing to hold what 20 and 15% probably equates to when it comes to purchase price.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean it's
surprised the
multiple
sellers
hundreds
still
of
want to do that.
thousands. Yeah, you sell them on the tax implications.
Yeah.
You find out their leanings and be like, oh, they're going to tax you to death and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, I just basically waited till the next new year on the first one, refinanced him out. And then this year I closed. So next year he'll probably want me to refinance out of his debt, but it's fixed at it's like 5% interest only. So it's,
Yeah, with what rates are right now, it's pretty good.
yeah, but so and then maybe I'll be able to get a couple more units off him if I do that. So
I think the way you did it is the way people need to hear that that's the best way to do it. Like word of mouth. I heard this person's looking to buy. I mean, I've been looking at stuff that's listed on the market and it's just insane.
yeah,
What prices
yeah,
sellers, at least in the Biddeford Saco area, because that's where I focus, these sellers are banking on 1031 money. They're banking on cash. People just want to invest into something, but like the numbers just don't make sense. So
no.
you really got to be able to catch someone that doesn't put it on the market and is willing to work something out.
Yeah, most of the deals I bought have been off market. I mean, we did buy a nice 6 unit, I guess, in the last year too in Biddeford. That one's great. That was on market, but it went under and then came back on, and we were able to scoop it up. And that has another buildable lot next door to it too. So I guess we have 2 lots in that area.
Buildable lots are huge in this market. I hear a lot of those type of properties going. So are you going to put something on those lots, or are you
I think so. Basically been just trying to. I've kind of been glad that rates have gone up lately because I kind of was able to take a step back and be like, you know what, I'm definitely not like I haven't penciled out any deals this year, which is like I used to do hundreds,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, nope, it's not even worth it. I can just as soon as it's sent to me, I'm like, nope. Is that on market? Nope. Like if it's to that point because especially if it's a 4 and under, like you said, the FHA, that's what you're competing against right now.
Those buyers are not looking at the numbers. They're just like, oh, sweet, there's 2 other units that'll help me pay my mortgage payment. That's going to be like $3,500 a month. They like do not care one bit about anything that an actual non-occupant investor is looking for. So
Yeah,
you can't even do it.
and that's why I sold 6 in Winslow because because I mean the prices doubled in 1 year almost.
So 2, 3 units to make the 6 or a 6 unit?
6 duplexes.
Oh, 6. Yeah. So yeah, it's perfect. I saw you post something about, I think that's when I messaged you most recently, is that you sold some things to kind of reposition for whatever's next.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, with the way they're reassessing the taxes, I mean, the sewer bills, all that stuff. So it was like these people moving in there, it was all almost off market. But our realtor knew somebody and they were like good people and they wanted to get in and have a home. So I was like, all right, we won't even put it on there for most of them. They gave us a very good price and, they'll do well. Like they'll never pay rent. They'll still cash flow in the 3 unit we sold while living there. And we made out and we don't have any more headaches on those particular properties.
Yeah.
So
it's good to consolidate and get rid of those type of properties now. So how many total units do you have now? I don't know if that's something you share.
So I was in a bunch in the Midwest too that I just got out of, like a couple hundred, and then we sold those. So I'm pretty much just down to my own portfolio. So I think after selling just in Maine,
Mhm.
somewhere between 60 and 70.
Yep.
So somewhere in there, 60, 70.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy to
Yeah,
kind of
I
lose track
honestly
of
have to
these
go
things.
back and look exactly what they are. Yeah, it's somewhere in that between 60 and 80 at this point. I don't know what's closed, what hasn't. So,
Yeah, I know.
um,
And I totally get it. What's so? I guess what do you envision for the next 5 years of your real estate investing? Just kind of still evaluating. I mean, I know you have those buildable lots. Is it more big portfolios? What does that look like? You think?
yeah, I think I'd rather do a big That's one thing I've learned. I'd rather do a big portfolio once a year than 10 or 15 BRRRs. I'll tell you
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
It's just so much easier. But it's a great way to get reps. You know what I mean? Like we learned so much by buying and then having to close and crunch and numbers and lending and, private money. But now if I can just find, a nice portfolio that will then do a cost seg on every year.
yeah,
No, that's kind of the goal because I think we've reached. That was the thing. I was able to step back now and like calculate our cash flow like in like 2 years.
hmm
And it was like, I actually really don't need any more properties, which was kind of this huge revelation because I've always been more and more and more and more and more.
yeah,
So now it's to the point of, all right, uh, one a year would be good. And then just basically kind of use it for obviously a place to make money, but then it would also help with taxes and
yeah,
everything like that with the cost seg studies.
yeah.
But I just effort wise, at this point, I don't really want to buy 15, 20 buildings in a year at separate times.
Yeah, that's a lot. You're always dealing with something of the transactions if you're doing that many.
Right. And that's where, yeah, a lot of it. And then you're rehabbing most of them because if you're
Yeah.
doing that many, you're doing the BRRRR process
hmm
pretty much, unless you just have a ton of money to deploy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I've got, when I first started doing it, I had a newborn.
hmm
Now he's 3, so it's not as easy. And I have older boys too. So it's, I have a
It's
17-year-old, a
tough.
13-year-old, a 3-year-old. So I'm busy enough that one a year would be good.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think you touched on something that's important. There is probably a lot of efficiencies to improve on your buildings, and doing the heating systems is one way to stabilize but potentially improve your cash flow. I'm sure there's some room to run with some of the rents in them, so it's like you can really tighten things up on your existing portfolio to squeeze some more money out of it before you do,
ex-
explode again.
exactly. That's what we've been total focus this year is like, okay, anything that comes open, get it as fresh as we can. Yeah. Like upgrading all the heating systems, taking a look at some of the roofs and like I said, the solar farm. So with all that kind of going, and then I added 3 units
Mhm.
of the existing units. So yeah, I mean, yeah, just when you look at that from an NOI perspective of like, just increasing rents and decreasing expenses and
Yeah.
offsetting utilities and adding units, it's like buying a bunch of them anyway.
Adding the units to an existing property and the cost that it takes to fix that, I mean, it's a huge return on your investment.
Yeah,
Big,
it
big.
was. Yeah, what you get for rent versus what you put into something like that, it's like instead of like a 1 or 2% rule, it's like a 10% rule,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
the cost is like the monthly rent is 10% of what it costs to build the unit,
Yeah.
which is 1% is great.
Yeah.
So if you can get
Yeah. When you're looking, exactly, when you're
right,
looking upon it. So I can relate to all that stuff. Before I let you go, what advice would you give to someone that's in that beginning stages thinking about investing in real estate? Is there something that you wish you would have known when you first got into it, or something that you tell people often?
there's no such thing as passive, but passive income. And then the same thing is like I would completely recommend what I did to start, like with that buying a multi-unit and living in it, the amount of after-tax money that saves. I mean, nowadays you could be paying 2,000 a month in rent. You know what I mean? So that's what 24 grand a year. If you pay taxes on that, that's like 32 grand in a year of your pay. So if you
Yeah.
offset that, that's like a $32,000 raise. And then never mind if you cash flow off that. So
Yep.
just by what I did, that one move, I was paying good deal, 1,500 all in or something, 1,700 in a house with a bunch of acres. But then I moved into a place with no driveway or anything. And I was cash flowing 800 or $1,000 a month while living there.
Mhm.
So that swing was like $2,700 a month after tax. So it's like
Yep.
I made a $30 or $40,000 pay raise just by doing that. And then all of a sudden now I'm investing monthly where I was living paycheck to paycheck before that. And then that allowed me to buy the next one.
But that is a sacrifice for you to do that, or kind of maybe a leap of faith, or it's not an easy decision to do all
No,
that
it's
for yourself.
not. That's what I was fortunate. Again, I was a single dad at the time. I hadn't yet gotten married, so it's a lot harder to convince growing a family in an apartment, but when you can buy a house. So I was only able to do it once, and then, then we moved into our home. But
Yeah.
yeah, other than that, I mean, there's ways to make money, flips, wholesaling, if you're just looking to make money. But I mean, if you can offset your housing, that just catapults you into being able to afford whatever the next venture you want to do.
Well, listen, man, I won't keep you any longer. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Fun chatting about all that stuff. Love following your Instagram. So it's at Maine Multifamily, and ton of good tidbits that you share out there, and just like kind of things where I'm like kind of in a bad mood. I see you post something, I'm like, you know what, that's awesome, and happy for all the success you've had.
Oh man, I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah.
It feels a bit corny sometimes, but
Well, I mean, it takes a lot to put yourself out there, or at least I think it does.
it does.
You're sharing stuff with the world, and it's cool. I'm sure on your end to hear that some people are receiving it. And
yeah. That's my wife got mad for a while that she was finding out about the deals on Instagram. I had to stop doing that. I had to tell her first.
Yeah,
but I was just buying too many of them. But
well, good stuff, dude. I appreciate the time. We'll definitely stay in touch. Thanks again for coming on the pod.
Yep. Thanks.